Welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I'm a financial mediator and business valuation expert. And today we are with Lisa Zeiderman. Lisa is a managing partner at Miller Zeidman, LLP. She's a matrimonial attorney, family lawyer, and CFL, which she'll tell you more about, and a certified divorce financial analyst, which some people know about. She also regularly handles complex financial and custody divorce matters for high net worth individuals. I think business owners are hesitant to get divorced because they don't know how much of their business, they don't know how much the business is going to be valued. They're very concerned because they always think pie in the sky of what their business is worth, And so the other thing, though, besides the business value, is alimony. And I think is there some way that is calculated?
So there is, but I want to say something because you just made such a good point, Melissa, and I want to go back to it. One of the documents that is so often used by attorneys are financial statements. And business owners often submit financial statements to banks to get loans, to get capital for their businesses. And it is really important to make sure that those financial statements are accurate, that they are not inflated, because I can tell you that those are what we call admissions. You put in a financial statement and you've asked a federally chartered bank to give you a loan based upon that financial statement. Well, you could be sure if you've inflated it, you have a problem, because your spouse's attorney is going to turn up with those financial statements. They're going to subpoena them from the banks. They're going to ask for them in discovery, and those numbers are going to be used. And so just as it's important to be honest about your income, your expenses, it's important to be honest about your financial statements. Even when you go to lease your car, don't inflate your income. Okay, don't inflate your business evaluation, because all of those things that
every personal loan, like literally the financial statements could be the linchpin that really says how different it is. It's also in operating agreements. It's also in buy-sell agreements that you agree like to this astronomical price to exchange, to buy between partners. And you're like, oh, we would never do that. But you did. You actually negotiated that. That's probably what you did think it was worth at the time because you negotiated it. And these things are indicators. The other thing is bank statements and credit card statements. I will say, now, let's go back to the one you just said, though. When they get a financial statement, the most part, what the client's going to say is, well, let's go get them on bank fraud.
That's right. And look, it doesn't help to go after your spouse who has the business, okay, to try to get them on bank fraud. That's not really helpful, okay, because, you don't want to kill the golden goose either. But it certainly is, as I said, it's an admission against interest. And it certainly is going to be a document that they're going to utilize in depositions, in discovery, in court papers, in all of those. And what are you going to say? I lied? I'm not really sure what you say, because that is a credibility issue too. So I think that people have to think, about what they're doing when they're in business. And again, it goes to, I'm going to go back to it because I think it's so important. Prenuptial agreements, right? They are so important for business owners and families who have businesses that they're passing on. They should encourage their adult children to think about these prenuptial agreements, because they really are important. It's not just you. It's not just you who is going to be exposed. It's your family too. Those family businesses.
Well, and I think that, like after everybody files and you have some suspicion that they're doing something in the business, and you start issuing subpoenas out, and because a lot of times no one's going to stop until that discovery gets, like you get the subpoenas, You have how many ever weeks to return them. And then you start digging through those bank statements and those credit card statements. And I think it's fascinating because we're such patterned individuals, and it's most of the time we're like, oh, you're never going to find what they did. Like they move so much money. They're so good at what they do. You'll never going to find it. It's all in the records. It's all like clear as day where you had, lunch with your girlfriend at 12 o'clock on every Thursday. Like it's clear as day, your movements through the business as well from a financial standpoint. So if you think that you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's 9/11/2024 and I'm going to get divorced today, right? And if you think that they're not going and well, wait a second, I can't get divorced today. I got to plan ahead. Okay. So let's start being clean on everything right now. Like they're going to find the hidden credit card. Like they're going to find the hidden, and like, let's say I hide it. Lisa, I hide that account. I hide that credit card. No one found it. I got away scot-free. Like, am I good? Am I off the hook?
So the answer is, if everybody has a signed agreement and it was missed, you may be off the hook. You may get away with it. I mean, it's not impossible. Maybe there was cash taken, maybe you were paid in cash and maybe you were able to hide your cash. Look, we're not all flawless, right? So I'm going to say you may get away with it, but the problem is if you don't get away with it, if you hid that one credit card and because you were putting your expenses on for your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever it is, right? If you hit that one account, then everything else starts to be called into question. And then you've just bought yourself a very expensive divorce. And you've also bought yourself a long divorce, right? Because you could be sure that the attorney for your spouse is going to be going through everything and double checking it and making sure. And there's going to be an expert who's going to look even more closely. And so it really is, I hate to say it, it's really important to be credible and to be honest, because if you aren't turning over the documents, if you're hiding stuff, it's going to make it much more difficult. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, as the business owner, you're going to be the person that they blame everything on, whether they're the female or the male, because that's where most of the money is going to go through. That's where most of the money is being created. And that's where all the eyes are going to be. And you've also had these conversations of like, honey, we're going to make millions and this is worth so much, and so then it comes down to kind of going back to the two things about alimony and adultery, because like this is where we would see like some states don't care about this. Does New York care about adultery?
So New York only cares about adultery to the extent that you have spent marital monies on someone who you're having a relationship with outside the marriage. That is the extent of what New York really cares about in terms of the finances. Well, there may be other things in terms of custody that New York may care about, but for the financial issues, it's really, was there a wasteful dissipation, that's what we call it, of marital assets, where these marital assets used, for example, for someone outside the marriage to travel, to buy gifts, to take them out to dinner, to do all of these things, and that is, and then there's going to be a calculation done so that it's quantifiable, and then at least half of that is going to likely go back into the marital pot, right? Or the whole thing will go back in the marital pot and then it'll be equitably divided as if you didn't spend it. So we certainly do care about it and we do try to quantify it and we do look for it. And, years ago I had a client who was sure that her spouse was not having any affair. And I remember her coming to me and saying this, and I was listening to the stories and I'm like, this doesn't sound right. And 2 years later, the person came back to me and she had found all of this documentation, and all of a sudden it became the reality, right? And we quantified millions of dollars that were spent. I mean, gifts and travel and all sorts of expenses, and it went back into the marital pot. And then, and so if it was there, it was then divided up again, right? So it is really, again, you're
I've
going
seen some
to.
of this in gifts. Like I'll see it in gifts as well if they've gifted away. But I also see, I mean, I'm typically recommending that unless you find some big pops of money that are going out, that it's not always the best analysis to pay for because it's hard to quantify. It costs a lot of money. And if you don't find enough and it's hard to prove, right? Then it's sometimes not the best cost benefit. Whereas if you're looking at alimony, that's going to be on a going forward basis for, maybe a certain amount of time. If you're looking at some of these a business valuation, there's more flux in a business valuation than there could be in $100 dinners left and right, because people are going to hide this. Like they're going to try to make you look for it and hide it in various accounts at places that you hopefully already went, so that it's not so obvious. But
I agree with you. And I think that you really have to look at whether it pays or not. Sometimes it does. Okay. Sometimes it does. Most times you're right. It doesn't. And so if it's part of the bigger analysis and it happens to come, as part of it, fine. Sometimes it's good to just settle on a number. Like we know that, you were seeing somebody outside the marriage. Let's just settle on a number and be done with that portion of it. And let's move on. And you've asked about alimony, and it's such, look, I'm going to say this. In New York, I think that alimony is difficult sometimes for people who have long-term marriages. It never, I shouldn't say it never, but it rarely gets you to the place that your lifestyle was entirely, right? So you have to expect that although lifestyle is one of the factors that that you look at when you determine alimony, there are a lot of other factors, and it doesn't go on forever. It's not. It's rarely lifetime. So, for example, if you're married up to 15 years, it's going to be 15 to 30% of the length of the marriage. If you're married longer than 15 years, like up to 20 years, then it's going to be, let's say, 30 to 40% of the marriage. And then over 20 years, then you're looking at 35 to 50% of the length of the marriage. But if you think about it, right, that's still not that long. And so I think particularly for and I'm going to say this, it's a little bit gender specific to some degree because we see it so much more for women, but for women who have remained at home and have been taking care of the children, and now it's, a 25-year marriage, and it's very difficult for them because no matter what, they don't get that benefit of that, trajectory of their income going way up, right, over the years. Right. And so they, no matter how much alimony we get for them, it's still not probably enough for them. But there's a bunch of factors that are looked at, and one of them is, of course, the length of the marriage, as we just talked about, and the age and the health of the parties, each of the parties. And it's important because if somebody is 70 years old and you're getting divorced from them, they're not going to work for another 20 years, right? So we've got to be somewhat realistic about this, all right? And, then they look at the present or future earning capacity of each of the parties, which is also important. What is the educational background? How much could you earn if you haven't been in the workforce? They may impute income, right? Someone may impute income to the non-working spouse and say you could earn such and such. A vocational analysis may get done so that they actually can figure out what is the income that you would likely earn if you were out there. Did you take care of the children? What was your lifestyle? What was your educational background? Was there a wasteful dissipation of assets? Was the domestic violence that prevented you from going out? Was there a premarital joint household? So maybe actually you got married, and you were only married 5 years, but you lived together for 15. Okay. And maybe you had a kid. Okay. During that first 15, they're going to look at that as well. Certainly the fact that health insurance has to now be purchased by a party when maybe it was covered before. So that will be factored into the calculations. Whether there was care for children or stepchildren of the marriage of the, maybe you cared for your spouse's stepchildren. That's something to be considered. Tax consequences. Now, that's important. And basically, the fact that you did not get that opportunity to work outside the home because you were taking care of children, they will look at that. But at the end of the day, a lot of it is about lifestyle and about the income of the other person, right? And what you are able to earn out there. And then there is a calculation. We have what's called statutory guidelines. So there's a statutory cap, which is then the calculations are made, but then the courts and your negotiations can go further than that because of all these factors that I just listed.